Welcome everyone to the Serverless Guru webinar. I am Josh Proto, Head of Marketing and Serverless Guru, and we have once again our fantastic founder and CEO, Ryan Jones.
Hello.
Pull him away from all the busy development work to give a talk about serverless impact and some of the ways that he's been seeing on the ground. Serverless has been helping the general software development marketplace clients that he's been working with, that we've been working with. And super happy to have you here and talk about that.
Yeah.
So with that, I'll leave it to you. I see you have, this slide deck prepared. So there we go.
Yes, I do. Sweet. Well, thanks, Josh.
Yeah.
So in this talk, in this webinar, we're going to go through serverless impacts. I gave this talk about 7 or 8 months ago, actually, at the New Relic office here in downtown Portland, the DevOps Days meetup. So it was kind of interesting because I got to gauge the opinion of what do people that are working on more traditional DevOps, like server management, containers, how do they feel about the serverless movement and about the serverless impact? One big thing that I got back from them is that a lot of the stigma around serverless is that it's going to be replacing people's jobs. And the way that I like to reframe that is that it's not going to be replacing people's jobs. It's going to give people people are going to have to adapt to match the marketplace, as always. So the same thing when a new version of Node.js comes out, you have to learn the new way that people write that code. And it's the same thing here is, you still have extreme amounts of value because of the whole notion around what you're actually doing is the same, right? So, you may be operating at this level of abstraction with serverless, but underneath it is still that knowledge that you need to understand the full piece of it, right? And the big thing too is that companies that have thousands of servers, they're not changing overnight. You're not just gonna wake up one morning and everything's serverless. It's gonna be 5 years of transitions, and that may not actually start for another 2 years. So we could be 7+ years away from this being at large scale at huge companies where they've actually migrated away from servers or containers to something more fully managed on AWS, for instance.
So what you're saying is people definitely shouldn't be scared about.
Yeah, you shouldn't be scared. No, I mean, as long as you're willing to learn new stuff, then you should be fine. And plus, if you learn it now, if you're paying attention to our webinars, our content, you're going to be ahead of the curve because as this landscape shifts, they're going to need thousands or millions of developers to do these transitions and to build this new infrastructure. And they're going to need people that understand all these different aspects. So if you already have AWS experience, for instance, you can parlay that into serverless experience on AWS, and you're going to be in really good shape. So,
great. And it seems like it's not anything different than what developers are really used to, which is constantly learning, having to adapt and learn new technologies.
Yep, exactly. So when it comes to having to pick up these skills, if you're already in the space, you're at an advantage. If you're not in the space yet, if you're a code student, if you pay attention to kind of this change that's happening and you kind of move that direction, right off the gate, what's going to happen is that you're going to start looking at these technologies and learning this high level knowledge that you probably wouldn't know yet. And that's what I kind of did when I first started my career is I basically was in code school and I started learning about serverless, and this was 2.5 years ago. And then from there, I was able to build up enough knowledge and skills around how to build this type of architecture to get a job at Nike right after graduation. And that was only because this knowledge, one is, people don't have it. And the other side of it is that if you're willing to kind of put yourself on the forefront and be on that bleeding edge and deal with the frustration and other things like that, the misunderstanding that comes along with it, you're going to reap all the benefit.
Yeah.
So with that, let's go ahead and jump in. So serverless impact, I've got a crater here on the screen because obviously, serverless impact is going to make an impact, literally.